Welcome back to Media and Money. In this week's Brand Central segment, we are going to discuss whether or not the public sector brand can ever stand for excellence. In studio to help us answer this, I have Anthony Swart from the Brand Union. Anthony, welcome.
Thanks, Jackie.
So that's the question. So could the brand image stand for excellence ever, would you say?
I think the answer is definitely yes. If we bring it into a much more immediate perspective, I think the answer is a little different there in that most public sector organizations don't stand for excellence in the mind of consumers. There are a few exceptions. Brands like South African Revenue Services have, over a period of time,
They've done phenomenally well, haven't they?
And they've really built a great culture of service delivery and efficiency, and their brand has prospered out of that, and people recognize that. But it's a standout amongst most public service organizations.
How did they get that right?
I think it's really it's leadership. Pravin Gordon came into SARS, I think it was probably about 8 years ago or so, and said, in simple terms, this place is a mess and we really need to fix it. And he started internally and he started saying, this is what we want. Here are the standards that we're going to set. Here's how we are going to deliver in order to make this an efficient organization. And he built a culture within that organization which is about efficiency, about delivery, and about getting things right. And then slowly moved it out from the people into the public's perception. And I think if you ask most South Africans today, they'll tell you probably a bit ruefully, seeing as we pay more tax because of it, but that SARS is really efficient and represents a good public service organisation.
Well, I find it amazing with SARS that people hate paying tax, but no one really has anything negative to say about SARS.
Absolutely not.
So, if you think about the brand perception of the IRS, for example, in America, has an incredibly negative brand perception anyway from Hollywood, where people are absolutely terrified of these people, but SARS just seems to have this, has managed to do it.
That's right.
But it just seems that leadership is key, that you have leadership and you start internally doing internal marketing first, because at the end, as you say, when you go to the post office or pay your Eskom bill or whatever it is, the people at the front end are the direct experience you have of that brand. And
if you
that's
can
a
change
huge
the
challenge.
perception there, then I think you're on the road to recovery, 100%. But in your opinion, what is a brand? If you're looking at a public sector, we're discussing now, what would the brand encompass here?
Okay. I think a brand in general terms is the impression that a consumer has in their mind about a company or a product. So if you said to me SARS, immediately there's a set of words in which I would describe SARS, and that's my perception, that's the brand for me. Often those perceptions are not directly linked to the reality, particularly where brands are changing. And I'll use SARS as an example. During the initial process where service delivery was improving within SARS, you could ask many people and they'd still tell you, no, it's an absolute mess. But you reach a tipping point. And I think that's the critical thing in managing brands, is to understand what your organization is doing, whether it's a public service organization or not, and to understand when you reach that tipping point, and to begin publicizing that externally, to say to people, come and test us. We are more efficient. We will be more friendly, or whatever it is that you're saying to them. And then you can quite quickly change public perception if you're able to deliver. And I think that's where many organizations make a huge mistake. They go out and they say, we're going to change our brand, and they use the brand as a band-aid. So they take an organization who can't yet deliver, and they say, look at us, come and test us. And when you go and test them, they don't deliver, and that actually creates greater negative perceptions about the brand. So back to Gavin's point, it does start internally. It starts with fixing your business and your service delivery internally, and that's what creates brand perception. And then you're able to leverage on that in terms of your advertising and your external persona.
No, I just think that the big challenge is that SARS had consistent leadership for a number of years. But you look at, for example, the Department of Health, where you had Nelson Mandela's time, there was the minister, which I think is really driven by the minister. Then you had a new person, which was a disaster. Then you had Barbara Hogan, who had a real challenge, who came in and actually really did something very positively. And then now you've got a new leader who's come in. So, it just seems that you have to, in South African terms, that the whole public service sector is a political sector. And how do you stop politics from actually interfering and thereby creating inconsistencies from a leadership point of view?
I think there's a very positive aspect happening right now. I think the change in government or in leadership of our country from Thabo Mbeki to Jacob Zuma, one of the things that Jacob Zuma has been quite clear about is he's saying the government needs to provide service delivery. And appointments seem to be moving to a point of decisions being made on service delivery and expertise rather than on political expediency. And in Thabo Mbeki's reign, political expediency was more how people got jobs. And with that as a starting point, Jacob Zuma has now also appointed the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. I think her name is Sikelo Sikeka. And she's driving a program that ensures, or is aiming to ensure, service delivery across a number of departments.
Right.
So it starts at the beginning, and there are a lot of positive signs now that the government is actually looking at how do we make ourselves more efficient. And I think that's a massively positive start. Again, it comes to, can we deliver on that? Can the government departments actually up their game and deliver on that? And that will build, or it'll provide the platform to build much stronger brands, which will then catapult them into the next era as well.
Do you think the World Cup will have an effect on this at all, in terms of service delivery?
I think it will.
Okay.
I think, though, that our ability to deal with the greater number of people that come in the World Cup, things like visas, things like how they're handled at the airports or at other border posts, things like how transport logistics work in terms of public transport, will create massive impressions of what South Africa is as a country. And those impressions will be, well, mainly to foreigners, but will impact back on us here in South Africa. So I think there's a massive opportunity. And it is a bit of sort of which side of this double-edged sword we fall. We could either do that really well and people could say, well, we were coming to Africa, we didn't expect much, but we've got a great experience in South Africa.
So
or they could say, we're coming to Africa and it actually enforced our expectations that everything's a mess. And yeah, obviously we've got to try and
But are we
make
going to
sure
be
that
ready before I mean, it's June.
I think that's anybody's guess. I think we will be. I think we will do an excellent World Cup. I think that some of the logistical issues like transport and so on will be a challenge for us. But you know what? Germany had its challenges and so on, but overall the World Cup there was a massive success, and I think overall we will be able to deliver a World Cup which is African but very successful. So I'm quite positive around that.
Great. Any final thoughts, Gavin?
No, I think just getting back to brands, I mean, one of the things you said, you know, the external perception, you know, when you talk about brands from a sort of brand point of view, you're just saying the brand is someone's experience of that service.
Yeah.
But isn't that just a business? Why is it a brand?
Well, brands are the external persona of a business or a product, and it's the impression that lives in the consumer's mind of what that business or product is. I think the process of brand management has to include a massive component of how that product or that service or that company performs. So yes, in a sense, it is the business. In some sense, you can say the business is the brand and the brand is the business.
But then everything's just brand.
Absolutely.